Coach Mendenhall's got a good team. His quarterback is a really good player, man. This guy has a strong arm. He's a physical runner, presents a lot of challenges. They use him quite a bit in the +1 run game, but he also has some nice targets on the outside, and he's got a deep running back room as well. So I think they present some challenges on offense that are a little bit unique. They will run some triple option. We haven't really played a true running quarterback recently, and so this is it's a unique challenge from that perspective. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we have on the defensive side of the ball is how do we kind of mitigate some of the off-schedule things that Barnes does, but also some of the things that he does within the offense really well as far as distributing the football, whether that be to the runners or to Pagan, his top target at receiver, number 10, or number 11 rather. And then they do some other things too. They have a high school quarterback, wide receiver that they bring in and do some different things there as well. On defense, I think they've got good players at all three levels. I like in the secondary, I like number 1 and number 18, the corner and safety. The linebacker, number 20, I think he's a Butkus Award watch list guy, really productive player, physical kid. And then interior, number 10, plays nose, and he's a big dude. He's hard to move. And then in the kicking game, they've got a kicker that's really consistent. He's 7 for 7 on field goals on the year. And then number 8, who's kind of a co-starter at running back, handles their kickoff and punt return duties, and he's an aggressive returner. And so should be a good atmosphere. I think, going to Logan, one of the things you're always going to have a good group behind you in the student section. And looks like it's going to be a good night for football. So with that being said, I'm happy to take any questions.
I guess what was the biggest thing you wanted to accomplish during the bye week to get ready for this last month of the season?
Yeah, I think health was one of it, right? And I include kind of that mental and emotional piece to that as well. These guys are around this facility a lot, whether it's training or training room, weight room, et cetera. And so for them to be able to get away for a couple of days, so we gave them last Saturday and Sunday off. We practiced Monday, Tuesday. They got a little break in the middle of the week on Wednesday. We practiced Thursday, and then they had Friday, Saturday off. So to just be able to get off their bodies, and some of them hadn't had some of these freshman kids hadn't had a chance to go home since August. And so for them to be able to see their people and catch their breath a little bit, and you could tell that time off was good. They were good last night, and they had a really good day today. So I think that was the biggest piece.
Mentally and emotionally, where would you say the team is with 4 games left to play?
Yeah, I think they understand that what we have left is what we have left. Like, this is kind of that 4-game season mentality and the opportunity to create momentum for our program and for the individuals that are having their chance to continue to play. Whether, it's a unique time in college football, right? I mean, it's like being in the NFL. Your tape is your resume, right? And so these guys have an opportunity to go out and put good things on tape down the stretch. Those that have aspirations to continue playing after college. I think understand that the clock's ticking, and I gotta go put my best foot forward. But ultimately, I think that for us in this situation, I always kind of use the analogy of, you've heard me say this before about, if your life is a football field, your time playing college football is a 3-yard run. Football's going to be done with you before you're ever done with it. And I think that sometimes that finality starts to creep in a little bit for some of these upper class guys. And they realize, man, I've given so much of my life to this game, and I want to really cherish and embrace and continue to have fond memories of how we finish this thing out. And I think this is a stretch that is a challenging stretch, but I think it's a stretch that there's opportunities for us. And so I think that kind of creates some excitement as well.
Where would you say you are mentally and emotionally with how the season's played out so far?
It's been that's a really good question. And it's been tough. There's been a lot of things that have happened both internally and externally that, when you're the leader of the organization, you got to hold things together. And I needed a little break too. And so I actually went down to the Nevada Day Parade and spent some time with a college buddy of mine. And I think it was good for me, to gain some perspective and get away from the game for a minute. But ultimately, this is what we do. I knew the job was dangerous when I took it, and I'm excited to see what these guys can put together down the stretch.
Your FBS career started at Utah State. I guess, what are your memories of Logan and the Aggies program that kind of helped jumpstart you to where you are now?
Yeah, one of my mentors in coaching, my college football coach, Mick Dennehy, was the head football coach there and gave me an opportunity to GA when I was 32 years old. And my daughter JC was born in Logan. It was kind of our first taste of the college football lifestyle, and we ended up being an independent for 2 of the 3 years that I was there, and that was not much fun. And ultimately, there was a coaching change that was made. And but the things that I learned in that program at that time still impact me today. And one of the things that happened was the opportunity for me to become a full-time coach was taking over special teams. And that kind of became the calling card for my career as far as what I became known as early in my career was a special teams guy. But I was off to a rocky start. It did not go well my first year as a special teams coordinator. And I can remember making a choice to realize it said safeties and special teams on my door tag. And I made sure they flipped that the next year, that I remembered that my job was to coordinate the special teams and give our team a chance to win. We had a young man by the name of Kevin Robinson that was a lights out returner and ended up playing for a little bit in the NFL. And one of the things that I remember about my last season there was we had an opportunity to be a statistical leader in college football. We were top 5 in net punt, and we had a chance to kind of move the needle there, but we led the country in punt return average that year. In spite of having, kind of a tough season. And now I can remember even talking to our guys in the special teams meetings kind of down the stretch of, hey man, we've got an opportunity to do something that's never been done at Utah State, lead the country in punt return average, and let's embrace that, and let's get Kevin an opportunity and continue to do that. And, in our last game there, we actually had a blowout win against New Mexico State, so that was one of the memories that I had, and made some great friends in coaching. Unfortunately, 2 of them are no longer with us. Our offensive line coach, Jeff Hoover, and our corners coach, John Rushing, have since moved on to greener pastures, but I still stay in touch with Coach D, and he's still a strong mentor to me. Mike Lynch was on that staff, so it was a very impactful time, and kind of learning what college football was all about.
With Carter Jones playing quarterback now, I guess, what do you want to see over the last month of the season to know that he's headed in the right direction?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've got to do a better job of for him is we've got to put the pieces around him better, right? One of those is being more committed to the run game. I think that's going to help him. I think our receivers got to make plays for him, and like this, that it's a kind of a double-edged sword where our receiver play hasn't been where we want it and our quarterback play hasn't been where we want it. Usually you'd hope that one would elevate the other, and that's been a struggle for us. And so I think with Carter, I think it's about the smallest details of the position, command in the huddle, playing with a great base, having exceptional footwork, taking care of the football, making good decisions, knowing when the clock's ticking and getting out of there. And so I think there's a ton of growth for him. But the thing I love about Carter is he's a really cerebral kid. He's got a high level of football intelligence, and he learns quickly. Like, he'll make a mistake, and he'll kind of figure that part out and go to the next step. And so one of the things we talked about was like, hey, we're going to coach you every single rep. That's what, like today, it was every rep, reminding him about playing with bent knees, having good footwork, going through his progression, understanding when the time's up and getting out. Because I think if he can use his legs a little bit more, you can see how an off-schedule quarterback changes the total dynamic in college football right now. It doesn't really matter what level you're at, right? You watch Texas A&M's kid take off, and everything's covered. That's great. Did a great job rushing the passer. Well, you didn't have the pass rush lanes perfect, and that guy gets out and gets 15 yards. That's demoralizing on a 3rd and 8. And so I think encouraging him to know when, hey, your time in the pocket's up, but you can still impact the game and put pressure on the defense.
How do you think playing this year will benefit him moving forward into 2026? I know ideally he probably didn't play this much this year, but this is how it's worked out.
Yeah, I think that you only get better playing football by playing. That's you can't go to the batting cage and hit 1,000. You can't just go put shots up. There's no way to simulate 11 on 11 FBS Division I college football. And so every single rep that he's getting right now is a rep that is a penny in the bank for him in terms of, like I mentioned a moment ago, he learns. Like, he's going to remember these things, and he's not going to make some of the mistakes that he made 2 weeks ago next week. And that's only going to benefit him as he goes through this. And, he has good command in the huddle. Like, that's one of the things I've been really, because he is kind of a stoic kid, but he does have really good command in the huddle, with the exception of kind of getting rattled in his first college start against one of the best defenses statistically in the country right now in San Diego State. I thought he's performed well, even bouncing back after making mistakes. And so I think there's plenty of growth for him down the stretch, and some of that starts in this offensive line room with those guys doing a better job of allowing us to have more balance in our offense and run the ball more effectively to take some pressure off of him. And some of it's in the wide receiver room of those guys elevating their play, and some of it's him saying, no, like, hey, I've got the ball. I can change the game right now one way or the other.
Playing a true freshman early and not having success can sometimes be detrimental to specific true freshmen. How do you feel like he's maybe handling kind of the
I think he's been great. I do. I think one of the things that maybe set him up for success to deal with some challenges was his high school career. Moving up a division his senior year and going from playing in the 5A division to the 6A division and having to play against Louisville and Duncanville and DeSoto, week in and week out was a fist fight. And so, he's a guy that has figured out how to deal with, hey, it's not going exactly the way I want it right now. How do I maintain a level head? How do I continue to work on my craft and improve? What can I do to help the team win? And he balances those things really well. And I think a lot of that, honestly, probably credit goes to mom and dad, for raising him right. And so I think that in a weird way, some of the struggles that he went through his senior year in high school have actually helped him in this situation.
How important is it to get a couple of wins in this final month just to feel like the program is moving in the right direction?
I think it's everything, Chris. We've got to create some positive momentum for ourselves. And I think that candidly, when I turn the tape on week in and week out, we've got some areas where we've got to enhance our talent on our roster. I think that's very clear. And you can make up for some of that on the defensive side. Effort can erase a lot of things on defense. But if you don't have guys that can make plays down the field on offense, that limits what you can do. And so I think if we can kind of figure out a way to continue to play Wolfpack football, really tough, really physical, in games in the fourth quarter, pull out some W's down the stretch, and then go to work fixing some of the issues on our roster, that creates momentum for us into recruiting, that creates momentum for us into spring and the offseason as well.
Something I didn't ask when it happened, but the NCAA went to one transfer portal period. I guess what was your thoughts on that? Are you in favor of that? Because I know you've said in the past, you don't really have your team until the second transfer portal in the spring. Well, now that's not there, so maybe you have your team earlier?
Yeah, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I think the timing of when the portal window is open, the 2nd through the 16th of January, I believe. Our school starts on the 20th, and most semester schools are probably going to start before that, and we were a little later than a lot of places. That I think it's going to continue to drag on. What I'm saying is, I'm not going to be able to go out and fill all the needs that we have in the portal in that short stretch, because now it's dead in December too. And so there's a very small window in January when you can get guys on campus, you can vet them, you can make sure that they're a good fit for the program. Academically, being able to get them into school, get them through admissions process. There's going to be a lot going on there. And to say that you're going to find 13 to 15 guys that are going to be able to enhance your roster in that small of a window, I think that can be dangerous, right? And so I think that probably what's going to happen is, we've got a group of high school kids that we anticipate signing on December 4th. We're kind of focusing on the junior college guys right now that are December grads that could also sign in that junior college signing period. And then we're going to have a smaller window of guys that we're going to prioritize through the first portal kind of stretch, understanding that how many ever thousands of guys are in the portal, most of them are still going to be in that portal as you get into March and you go down the stretch. So there's going to still be a chunk of guys that you're vetting and bringing on campus for visits all the way up to May. And so it'll be different in some respects, but I still think it's going to be almost like there is a second portal window. Those guys they entered in January.
Looking at the film, I guess, what are the positions that need to be upgraded the most before next year?
Yeah, I think that's a loaded question because you don't know who's leaving, who's jumping in the portal and all that kind of stuff. And so, but I think wide receiver is a priority position for us right now. That's the spot that we've got to enhance our talent level. I think we'd like to get a bigger back, a guy that is a little bit more durable between the tackles, a 220-pound kid that can kind of, do what Fresno State did to Boise State the other day. Just line up and run counter and split zone, 4 yards of carry to run the clock out. With nice luxury to have. I think we're going to have to revamp our secondary again. But the one thing that's good is we signed a bunch of talented high school kids. And I think that some of those guys will be ready to play as redshirt freshmen, a decent amount. We've got some guys playing right now as true freshmen. And so I think that's another area. And then tight end's a spot where, we've got to add a piece or two. So, I could probably say every single spot, to be honest with you, but specifically, those would be the kind of the top priorities right now.
Seems like a lot of high-scoring games for Utah State, which is good for your offense, not so good for your defense. I guess, why has the offense been so prolific, and why have there been vulnerabilities on their defense?
I would say it's quarterback-driven for them on offense. I think that the Barnes kid, whether it's him taking off schedule and creating outside the offense, him being a +1 run threat, and they run some elements of triple option as well. And candidly, they have some, they've hit some trick plays and kind of gotten to some explosives. It's really kind of been driven through the explosives, but they've been the benefactor of some busted coverages. I mean, there's a lot of explosive plays on tape where DBs fall down or they miscommunicate, and that has created momentum for them in that phase. I think defensively, I think they had some injury problems in the secondary early in the season that kind of created some issues for them. But, I think that you can tell that maybe they're a little less, their personnel on offense is maybe a little bit better than their personnel on defense at some spots. And they are very aggressive on defense. I mean, they bring a lot of pressure, and when they get home, it creates a negative play, obviously, and then that hangs you out, might create some more one-on-one opportunities down the field. But, I think they're a 4-4 team that's played A&M and Vanderbilt and gone to Hawaii and played a tough game, but that's a tough place to play, obviously. And so I think they probably enjoyed the bye week to get some things polished up, and I'm sure they're saying, hey, we got to get to 2 to get to a bowl game, and let's start this Saturday.
I mean, a lot of upsets last week in the conference with Boise State losing, UNLV losing, Hawaii losing. What do you make of like the parity in the conference? And it seems like anybody can win on any given weekend, and you guys just haven't been able to take that step to get the win.
I think that one of the things that does show up to me, I'll use Hawaii for example. They've got a freshman quarterback that's playing well within that system, and they're a physical, tough outfit. But they have a guy you got to worry about. Number 5 is a real live receiver, and a lot of the offense goes through him. And when you have that one individual that you've got to really focus on and pay attention to, it opens up other opportunities, right? And you can make the same argument that number 6 for New Mexico has kind of been that guy for them. Although we were able to contain him pretty well, he's hurt pretty much everybody else that they played against. And Boise obviously loses their quarterback. But I don't know that would have made a difference the way that game was played. And candidly, I feel like we kind of beat them up a little bit physically when we played them. And I definitely think that they've got some injury issues that are going to be a problem for them down the stretch. I think that was impressive to do that on the blue. That's a hard place to play, regardless of who's playing quarterback for Boise State. That's a program that has a lot of history and tradition. And I thought that was a really good win for Fresno.
The parade, was that the first Nevada Day parade you went to? I guess what was your take on that?
That was impressive. That was an impressive deal. Yeah, my buddy lived in Carson City for like 20 years. He's like, oh, you got to come down. All right, so it started with, 9 a.m. at his house, and then 10 a.m. the parade starts. It went till like 2 o'clock. I'm like, this is a marathon. He's like, oh no, the party starts after the parade. So it was cool. It's very unique to Nevada. I've lived in a lot of states. I don't know that there's a state that celebrates a day the way that they do, and it was cool. It was a good party.
I mentioned the transfer portal rule change. If there was like one rule change you could make in college football that you think would enhance or make it better, I guess what would that be?
Are you talking on the field or off the field?
I mean, either way. Yeah. I mean, I'd say outside of conference realignment because that doesn't seem like that's ever going to be fixed.
I think that what's really causing problems in college football right now is the volume of repeat transfers. So if there was a way to limit the number of opportunities you have to transfer, I think that would enhance the experience in the sport. I think that the camaraderie would be better, the connectivity to the university. I think all of those things would be enhanced. The problem is we've opened Pandora's box, right? And so I don't know that you're going to reel that one in. I think it's very different in a lot of ways. And one of the things that's interesting about this second portal, this portal situation now, so you can only sign one financial aid. So if you're transferring to Nevada, you sign a financial aid agreement. That's the only financial aid agreement that you can sign in that window, right? So that would say that you're bound to that school. Well, the issue now is people are going to continue to shop because at University X, they may have enough rev share money and NIL money to say, hey, look, we'll just pay for your scholarship this way. You don't need to sign another NIL. So they could actually sign a financial aid agreement and then still end up at another school. And so that there's some of these loopholes that need to be closed so that you can say, hey, we did this the right way. We vetted this young man. We recruited him. We brought him on our campus. We mutually agreed that this would be a good situation. They said we're coming, and that was the end of it. That's not the end of it right now. And so that kind of gets back to the ability for these guys to be so mobile. And you can make the argument, well, coaches have the same opportunity. And maybe there needs to be some things done on that. But that's happening naturally, right? Like, this is becoming the NFL. If you don't make the college football playoff, see you later. And so the amount of money that's involved is driving a lot of this. And, we're at the other end of the spectrum. That doesn't necessarily concern us as much, but I do think it affects the game. I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but what the hell? I got a mic. So the game of football is, a lot of people will say it's never been more popular, right? College football's never been more popular. It's never had better TV ratings. There's never been more TV money involved. And there's a lot of really positive things about that. But when you're really looking at it, that's the tip of the iceberg, right? That's the 35 teams that have a chance to play in that 12-team playoff, and College Game Day shows up there. And, college football goes a lot deeper than what you see on the surface. There's junior college football, there's NAIA football, there's Division III football, Division II football, FCS football, G5 football, and it all has relevance. I mean, I played NAIA football. That, just because I wasn't on SportsCenter, didn't make my experience relevant and impactful in my life. And I think that's some of the things that we're losing with the perspective change, right? Of how does this opportunity to go get an education impact that young man's life? Well, we've devalued the education because it's more about money now. And I think that's something that we can all lament. And I'm certainly not going to change that. I've got to kind of embrace it in a weird way. I don't always have to agree with everything, but I've got to understand that the rules of the game have changed. And I think that's, I think that does impact it, maybe not in a real positive way, even though the game itself is fairly healthy.
Yeah, and I think buyouts are over $200 million this year for college coaches. I think Brian Kelly won 71% of his games at LSU, and it wasn't good enough. I mean, do you see less patience nationally? And obviously you're trying to build something requires
hey, trust me, I feel it every single day. I'm very well aware that this is a production-based business, and we have not won a lot of football games at the University of Nevada, and nobody should feel sorry for Brian Kelly, and nobody should feel sorry for Jeff Choate. This is what we signed up for. And so I don't know exactly what the answer is to that, I don't, but I think that part of it is players have more power than they ever have. Right? What's going to get you is not the wins and losses. Sometimes it's as much as, did you keep the locker room intact? Do they still believe? And I think that's where administrators probably make those tough decisions, is more along those lines. At some places, obviously at other places, hey, the money part of it does drive a lot of those decisions.
So I guess what's keeping you optimistic during these, it's probably a longer rebuild than you thought. You said you were going to come here to launch, and obviously the win-loss record is not where
and we've been so close, and there's a lot of gut-wrenching losses, and who knows what, which one of those that trips it that creates that confidence, and we can drive forward. And I think that, I think that one of the things that gives me hope is the acknowledgement and recognition of our administration that football had not been as big a priority, perhaps, for a while at the University of Nevada as it is now. I think President Sandoval and Stephanie have both, both in terms of their external support and their internal support, said, hey, it's time we got to get football back on track. That's going to help the university be better holistically. And, there's a great example out the door here in terms of the indoor complex, and I think that's a really important, not just concrete example, but symbolic example that, hey, Nevada's going to get back on track here. And I think that's something that it is going to take a minute. There's no question about it. And it is painful. This is what we do for a living, and we pour our heart and soul into this, as do the kids. And, but there's, I kind of lean into what are the examples, the life lessons that can be learned through situations like this? How do you continue to persevere through difficult times? There's a lot of value in things like that. And nobody wants to go through it. But you learn a lot more in these situations than I ever did winning a bunch of games at Boise when we had better players than everybody else. And so hopefully I'm passing some of those lessons along, and there'll be staying power with those, and that I can be a living example of what it means to have courage in the face of adversity every single day. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
With how the season's been going, how have you been keeping the spirits up in the locker room?
Well, I think that some of it is, you got to remember this, football players play football, right? When we go out, and you can only do it for a finite amount of time, Not everybody's going to be Virgil Green and get to play 10 years in the NFL. So, I lean into my experience. Yeah, every chance that I had to put on a football helmet, that was that was my armor of God. That was my sacred moment. I could go be a different human being between the white lines, and I can embrace that. And I knew it was fleeting. I knew it wasn't going to last forever. And so knowing that you can lean into the fact that, like, this is a very unique game, and you have such a finite window to play it, and that you don't make it drudgery. Like, you know, if I'm browbeating these kids and taking it out on them every day, yeah, that's going to destroy their spirit. But if I'm pointing out the lessons that can be learned from this and the fact that, hey, we're this far away, what's the next step? What do you have to change? What do I have to change to improve and get better through this process? I think that's the direction that you got to point in. And that's my North Star is always going to be that. Like, I believe in the educational component of college football. I believe in building men through this sport because that's what happened with me. Like, that was my life. And I think as long as the leader of the organization keeps those things in perspective and keeps pushing forward, you know, like, you want to see us quit? That would be me quitting. I'm not quitting. And so I think that lesson and that message it allows these guys to go out. And at the end of the day, we play football. We don't work football, right? And so let's keep going.